The morning sun had barely risen over the private aviation terminal when Dr. Maya Richardson pulled up in her Tesla Model S. She checked her watch, 6:45 a.m., exactly 1 hour before her scheduled flight. As one of Boston's top neurosurgeons, she was used to being early and perfectly prepared. Today was important. She had to reach Chicago by 9 a.m. for a medical conference where she would share her groundbreaking research on brain tumor treatment. Maya grabbed her small carry-on suitcase and briefcase, both containing carefully organized materials for her presentation. Her dark blue blazer and matching pants were crisp and professional, her natural hair styled neatly. At 38, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had worked twice as hard to get where she was. The terminal's glass doors slid open smoothly as she approached. Inside, the private aviation center looked more like a luxury hotel lobby than an airport. Soft lighting bounced off marble floors, and comfortable leather chairs dotted the waiting area. A few other early morning travelers sat quietly with their coffee cups, most of them in business attire. Maya walked directly to the security checkpoint, pulling out her ID, conference invitation, and flight documentation. She had done this dozens of times before. Private flights were often necessary for her emergency surgeries and medical conferences. The security guard, a man whose name tag read Thomas Whitman, looked up from his phone with obvious disinterest. "Good morning," Maya said with a polite smile, holding out her documents. "I have a 7:45 flight to Chicago." Whitman barely glanced at her papers. "Are you sure you're in the right place? This is private aviation only." Maya's smile didn't waver, though something tightened in her chest. "Yes, I'm in the right place. Here's my flight confirmation and ID." Just then, a white businessman walked up to the checkpoint next to them. Whitman immediately turned to him with a friendly nod. "Good morning, sir. May I see your documentation?" The man handed over his papers, and within 30 seconds, Whitman waved him through. Maya stood there, still holding out her documents. "Excuse me," she said firmly. "I was here first, and I have a flight to catch." Whitman turned back to her, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, I need to verify your documentation thoroughly. We have strict protocols here." "Of course," Maya replied, keeping her voice steady. "As you can see, I have all the necessary paperwork, including my medical license and hospital ID, since I'm traveling for a medical conference." Another white passenger passed through quickly while Whitman supposedly examined Maya's documents. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Maya watched as he scrutinized every letter on her ID, then began questioning her. "How did you book this flight?" "Through my hospital's travel department, as clearly shown on the booking confirmation." "And you're saying you're a doctor?" Maya took a deep breath, reaching for her phone. "Yes, I am Dr. Maya Richardson, head of neurosurgery at Boston General. I'm recording this interaction now, as I've been standing here for 15 minutes while you've let others pass through with minimal checking." Whitman's face reddened. "Are you threatening me? I'm just doing my job." "No, I'm documenting what appears to be discriminatory treatment," Maya replied calmly. "I've shown you multiple forms of identification. My flight is in less than an hour, and you've let 3 other passengers through without question while I've been standing here." A small crowd had begun to gather. Some people were taking out their phones, others watching with concerned expressions. A young woman stepped forward, saying, "I just went through security, and he barely looked at my ID." Whitman's radio crackled. "Everything okay over there, Tom?" a voice asked. "I have an uncooperative passenger," Whitman responded, emphasizing the words. Maya spoke clearly into her phone's recording. "I have been nothing but cooperative. I have provided all requested documentation. I am being denied access to my flight without cause." Finally, a supervisor hurried over. A woman in her 50s named Barbara Chen, according to her badge. She quickly assessed the situation. "What seems to be the problem?" she asked, looking between Maya and Whitman. "I've been trying to verify this person's documentation," Whitman said stiffly. Barbara glanced at Maya's papers, then at her watch. "Dr. Richardson, I am so sorry for the delay. Everything appears to be in order." She turned to Whitman with a sharp look. "Let her through immediately." But Maya's heart sank as she checked the time. 7:30 a.m. Even if she went through now, there wasn't enough time for pre-flight procedures. Her carefully planned schedule, her important presentation, all derailed by 15 minutes of baseless scrutiny. Maya sat in Barbara Chen's office, her hands wrapped around an untouched cup of coffee. The supervisor had been apologizing for the past 10 minutes, but Maya's thoughts were on the 300 doctors waiting in Chicago for a presentation that wouldn't happen. "I've already emailed the conference organizers," Maya said, her voice tired but composed. "They're going to have to rearrange the entire morning schedule." She paused, looking at her phone. Already, concerned messages were flooding in from colleagues, and her department head, Barbara, leaned forward across her desk. "Dr. Richardson, we will book you on the next available flight, completely free of charge." "The next flight won't help," Maya explained, pulling up her presentation schedule on her phone. "I was supposed to present new surgical techniques at 9:30 a.m. These are doctors who flew in from around the world." She didn't add that she had spent months preparing for this moment, or that being the only black female neurosurgeon speaking at the conference made her visibility especially important. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her lawyer, Marcus Jenkins, responding to her earlier message. "Excuse me," Maya said, "I need to take this call." She stepped into the hallway, aware of the curious glances from terminal staff. Word had spread quickly about the incident. Some looked embarrassed, others seemed defensive, and a few gave her supportive nods. "Marcus?" "Yes, I have the whole thing recorded." Maya's voice was low but clear as she described what happened. "No," I remained calm. "Yes, there are witnesses. Several passengers recorded it too." While she talked with her lawyer, Maya's other phone, her personal one, kept lighting up with notifications. The short clip she posted of the incident was already gaining traction. She had kept the post factual. "This morning, I was prevented from boarding my flight to a medical conference, despite having all required documentation. Other passengers were allowed through security without delay. Here's what happened." Back in Barbara's office, the supervisor was on the phone with the corporate office. Maya could hear the stress in her voice as she described the situation. "Yes, sir. No, sir. I understand this is serious." Maya pulled out her laptop and began composing emails. First, to the conference organizers, expressing her deep regret and professionally explaining the situation. Next, to her department head, providing a detailed account of the morning's events. Finally, to her patients scheduled for next week, assuring them that their appointments would not be affected. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Sarah Cohen, who was already at the conference. "Maya, everyone here is shocked. They're showing your video in the lobby. Half the morning speakers are threatening to pull out in solidarity." Maya closed her eyes for a moment. This was exactly what she hadn't wanted, to become the center of attention for anything other than her medical work. She had spent 15 years building a reputation based on her surgical skills and research. Now, in many people's minds, she would be that doctor who was discriminated against. Barbara ended her call and turned back to Maya. "Dr. Richardson, our CEO would like to speak with you directly." "I appreciate that," Maya replied, "but all communication should go through my lawyer now." She stood up, straightening her blazer. "I need to head home and deal with this situation." As Maya walked through the terminal toward the exit, she noticed Whitman was no longer at his post. Several passengers who had witnessed the incident stopped her to share their contact information, offering to be witnesses. One elderly man, a retired judge, handed her his card and said, "What happened to you today was unacceptable. Don't let them sweep this under the rug." In her car, Maya finally allowed herself a moment to process everything. Her hands shook slightly as she placed them on the steering wheel. The conference she'd spent months preparing for was missed. Her groundbreaking research would have to wait for another platform. Hundreds of messages needed responses. But something else was happening too. Her phone showed thousands of shares of her post, with more coming every minute. Comments poured in from other medical professionals sharing similar experiences. Major news outlets were requesting interviews. Civil rights organizations were reaching out. Maya took a deep breath and started her car. This wasn't the spotlight she had wanted, but maybe it was one she needed to step into. As she drove home, she began mentally preparing for what came next. This wasn't just about a missed flight anymore. It was about making sure nobody else had to go through what she experienced this morning. Her lawyer's words rang in her head. "Maya, you did everything right. You stayed professional, you documented everything, and you have witnesses. Now, Let's make sure this creates real change. By the next morning, Dr. Maya Richardson's story had exploded across social media. Her original post had reached over 1 million views, and the hashtag #LetDoctorsFlee was trending nationwide. Maya sat at her kitchen island, sipping her morning tea and watching her phone light up with endless notifications. Her sister Rachel called early, her voice filled with both concern and pride. "Maya, have you seen the morning news? You're on every channel." Maya switched on her TV, and sure enough, there she was. News stations were playing the clip from the terminal on repeat. But what caught her attention weren't just the images of her confrontation with Whitman. It was the flood of similar stories now coming to light. A black female pilot shared her story of being repeatedly questioned about her credentials at the same terminal. A Latino cardiac surgeon posted about having to show triple identification before being allowed to board his emergency medical flight. More and more medical professionals of color began sharing their experiences, turning Maya's incident into a movement. Around 10 a.m., Maya's lawyer Marcus called with surprising news. 3 other people have come forward with complaints about the same security guard, he told her. All from the past 6 months, all involving minorities in professional positions. One was even a federal judge. As Maya listened, she opened her laptop to find hundreds of emails from fellow doctors. One message particularly caught her eye. It was from Dr. James Chen, the head of neurosurgery at Chicago General. "Dear Dr. Richardson, what happened to you is unfortunately familiar to many of us. 20 years ago, I was blocked from entering my own operating room because security didn't believe I was the surgeon. We stayed quiet then, but not anymore. I've started a petition with department heads across the country demanding changes in private aviation security protocols. We already have over 500 signatures." The support wasn't just coming from medical professionals. By afternoon, civil rights organizations had taken up her cause. The National Medical Association issued a strong statement condemning the incident and calling for industry-wide changes in private aviation security practices. Maya's phone rang again. This time it was Barbara Chen from the terminal. "Dr. Richardson, you should know that more people are coming forward about Whitman. 2 of our own staff members have admitted they witnessed similar incidents but were afraid to report them. We had no idea this was happening regularly." Social media continued to amplify the story. Medical students shared their own fears about facing discrimination as they advanced in their careers. A group of black female doctors started a social media challenge, posting photos of themselves in their white coats with a caption, "What a doctor looks like," and #LetDoctorsFly. Around 3 p.m., Maya received an unexpected call from Dr. Sarah Cohen in Chicago. "Maya, you need to see this. The conference just held an impromptu session about discrimination in medical transportation. Over 400 doctors attended. They're creating a task force to gather data on similar incidents across the country." The story took another turn when a former employee of the private aviation company reached out through Maya's lawyer. "There's more to this," the anonymous source revealed. "Whitman has a history of complaints, but they were never properly investigated. I have documentation." By evening, major medical associations were releasing statements of support. The American Medical Association announced they would review their contracts with private aviation companies that didn't have clear anti-discrimination policies. Several hospitals followed suit. Maya's original video had now been viewed over 5 million times. News channels were requesting interviews, and civil rights lawyers were offering their services. But what touched Maya most were the messages from young medical students of color. "Dr. Richardson, seeing you stand up to discrimination gives me hope. I'm a first-year medical student, and sometimes I wonder if there's a place for me in this profession. Thank you for showing us how to be strong and professional in the face of prejudice." As the day drew to a close, Maya sat in her home office, overwhelmed by the response. Her missed conference presentation had turned into something much bigger. What started as one incident was becoming a catalyst for change. Her lawyer's final call of the day brought more news. "Maya, we've been contacted by 3 major medical centers. They want to partner with you to create new guidelines for medical transport services. This is becoming a movement." Maya looked at a photo on her wall, her graduation from medical school, standing proud with her family. She thought about all the future doctors watching this unfold, all the professionals who had faced similar discrimination in silence. Sometimes, she realized, a missed flight could lead to an even more important destination. The executive boardroom of Elite Aviation Services buzzed with nervous energy. CEO Richard Palmer sat at the head of the long table, his face grim as he watched their company's stock price drop for the third straight day. The screens behind him displayed news headlines and social media trends, all focused on Dr. Maya Richardson's incident. Our first statement was a disaster, Sarah Martinez, the head of PR, said bluntly. She held up her tablet, reading their initial response. Elite Aviation Services takes all allegations seriously and is reviewing the incident. The public is tearing us apart for this generic response. The company's phones hadn't stopped ringing. Major hospitals were threatening to cancel their contracts. Medical transport services, worth millions to Elite Aviation, were hanging in the balance. 3 corporate clients had already suspended their accounts. Richard rubbed his temples. What are our options? Just then, his assistant rushed in with more bad news. Sir, Boston General Hospital just announced they're suspending all contracts with us. Dr. Richardson's own hospital is leading the charge. The room fell silent. Boston General was their biggest medical transport client in the Northeast. The loss would cost them millions. Meanwhile, across town, Maya sat in her lawyer's office, reviewing Elite Aviation's attempts to contact her. Their offers had started small, a free flight, then multiple free flights, then monetary compensation. Each offer was politely declined through her lawyer. They're missing the point, Maya had explained to Marcus, her lawyer. This isn't about free flights or money. This is about systemic change. Back in the Elite Aviation boardroom, a young black woman named Tanya Williams, recently promoted to VP of Operations, finally spoke up. We're approaching this all wrong. Dr. Richardson isn't looking for compensation. She's a highly respected neurosurgeon who was humiliated in our terminal. We need to show real commitment to change. The room turned to her as she continued. I've been the only black executive in this room for 3 years. I've stayed quiet too long. Our security staff is 90% white. Our executive team is 95% white. We have no formal diversity training program. No clear reporting system for discrimination. We need to fix the system, not just this incident. Richard Palmer's face reddened, but before he could respond, more urgent news arrived. The American Medical Association had just released a statement recommending all affiliated hospitals review their contracts with private aviation companies lacking clear anti-discrimination policies. Our stock is down 12% now, someone called out. Tanya stood up, her voice firm. I have a proposal, real changes, not just PR moves. First, we overhaul our hiring practices. Second, we implement mandatory anti-bias training, not just one session, but ongoing programs. Third, we create a diverse community advisory board to help shape our policies. Sarah Martinez nodded enthusiastically. This could work, but we need to act fast. Our competitors are already announcing their own diversity initiatives. We're falling behind. The CDO finally spoke. What's our legal exposure here? Marcus Jenkins, Maya's lawyer, could have answered that question. His office had received calls from multiple passengers who witnessed the incident, all eager to testify. The former employee's documentation of previous complaints against Whitman had proven genuine. The case was strong, and they'd all knew it. By evening, Elite Aviation Services released a new statement. This time, it was different. We apologize unreservedly to Dr. Maya Richardson for the discriminatory treatment she experienced at our terminal. We acknowledge this reflects deeper issues that require systematic changes. Effective immediately. Security Supervisor Thomas Whitman has been terminated. We are launching a comprehensive review of all security protocols. We are implementing mandatory anti-bias training for all staff. We are creating a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer position. We are establishing a community advisory board to guide our policies. The statement concluded with a personal note from CEO Richard Palmer. We failed Dr. Richardson and potentially many others. We are committed to earning back trust through actions, not just words. Maya watched the statement on her living room TV, her phone already buzzing with reactions. Her lawyer called immediately. They're serious this time. They want to meet with you, not about settlement, but about helping shape their new policies. She thought carefully before responding. The company's future might depend on her next move. More importantly, the opportunity to create real change was finally here. Set up the meeting, she said. But make it clear, I'm not interested in being a PR move. If they want my involvement, they need to prove their commitment to long-term change. As Maya ended the call, she noticed hashtag LET Aviation trending alongside hashtag Let Doctors Flee. The conversation was shifting from outrage to accountability, from a single incident to systemic change. Perhaps this was the real destination all along. A week after the incident, Maya sat in her office at Boston General Hospital, staring at her computer screen. Her inbox was flooded with over 1,000 unread emails. News reporters camped outside the hospital, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. Her phone kept buzzing with social media notifications. Dr. Richardson. Her assistant Sarah poked her head in. Your first patient is ready, but there are some reporters in the waiting room again. Should I call security? Maya sighed and shook her head. No need. I'll use the back entrance to the exam room. She gathered her patient files, feeling the weight of being in the spotlight. This wasn't what she had trained 15 years for. She was a neurosurgeon, not a civil rights activist. In the exam room, her patient, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, smiled warmly. I saw you on the news, Dr. Richardson. Those people at the airport were wrong to treat you that way. Maya managed a professional smile, trying to redirect the conversation. Let's focus on your recovery, Mrs. Chen. How's your head feeling after the surgery? But even her patients couldn't help bringing it up. By lunchtime, Maya retreated to her private office, declining invitations to eat in the doctor's lounge. Her usual peaceful lunch break now felt like a press conference, with colleagues wanting to discuss the incident or share their own stories. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her mother. Baby, have you eaten today? Her mom asked, knowing her daughter's habits when stressed. I saw you on Good Morning America. You look tired. I'm fine, Mom, Maya replied, but her voice cracked slightly. For the first time since the incident, she let her guard down. I didn't want any of this. I wanted to present my research, help my patients, do my job. Now everyone sees me as the doctor who got discriminated against, not the neurosurgeon who developed a new surgical technique. That evening, Maya had her weekly therapy session with Dr. Watson, which she'd started seeing 3 days after the incident. How are you really doing? Dr. Watson asked, noting Maya's perfectly pressed suit and composed expression. I jump every time someone approaches me in public, Maya admitted. I had a panic attack in the parking garage yesterday when a security guard asked to see my hospital ID. I've been taking Ubers to work because I can't face the hospital parking attendants. She pulled out her phone, showing Dr. Watson some of the thousands of messages she'd received. Many were supportive, but some were hostile, questioning her story or accusing her of playing the race card. I feel like I'm carrying everyone's hopes and fears, Maya explained. Young medical students see me as a hero. Civil rights groups want me as their spokesperson. My hospital wants me to be their diversity ambassador. But sometimes I just want to be Dr. Richardson, the neurosurgeon. Later that night, Maya's sister Rachel came over with dinner, knowing Maya hadn't been cooking much lately. They sat on her couch, eating Thai food straight from the containers like they used to do in college. Remember when we were kids, Rachel said, and you performed surgery on all my dolls. You always knew exactly what you wanted to be. Maya smiled at the memory. Now I'm not sure who I am anymore. Yesterday, a mother asked me to take a picture with her daughter, a young black girl who wants to be a doctor. She called me her hero. Rachel, I'm not ready for that responsibility. Rachel put down her food and turned to her sister. Maya, you're still the same person. You're still that brilliant girl who operated on my dolls. Still the student who graduated top of her class. Still the surgeon who saves lives. This situation didn't change who you are. It just showed the world what we've always known about you, your strength, your dignity, your determination to make things right. Maya's phone buzzed again. Another interview request. But this time, instead of ignoring it, she read it carefully. The interviewer wanted to focus on her medical research and her journey to becoming a neurosurgeon, with the incident as just one part of her story. For the first time in days, Maya felt a spark of hope. Maybe she didn't have to choose between being a surgeon and being a voice for change. Maybe, like in the operating room, the key was finding the right balance, making precise movements toward healing not just bodies, but the system itself. You know what, Rachel? She said, sitting up straighter. I think I'm ready to tell my whole story, not just the incident, but everything. It's time people knew that I'm not just the doctor who got discriminated against. I'm Dr. Maya Richardson, and this is just one chapter in my journey. 2 weeks after the incident, Maya sat in a large conference room at Alight Aviation's headquarters. Around her sat representatives from 5 major private aviation companies, hospital administrators, and civil rights lawyers. The room buzzed with energy as people took their seats for the first meeting of the Aviation Equality Task Force. Tanya Williams, Elite Aviation's new Chief of Diversity and Inclusion, stood at the front of the room. We're not here just to talk, she announced. We're here to make real changes. Dr. Richardson's experience opened our eyes, but now it's our responsibility to fix the system. On the screen behind her, pictures showed the changes already happening at Elite Aviation's terminals. New security teams were more diverse, with clear name badges and body cameras. Signs displayed a QR code for reporting discrimination. A newly installed feedback system sent reports directly to corporate headquarters. Maya watched as other companies presented their own changes. Sky Charter Services had hired their first black female head of security. Private Air Express announced mandatory monthly anti-bias training for all staff, but most importantly, they were sharing data and working together. Last month, none of us tracked discrimination complaints, a security director admitted. Now we're all using the same reporting system. We can spot patterns and stop problems before they start. During the lunch break, Maya walked around the terminal with Barbara Chen, who had been promoted to head of customer experience. The changes were visible everywhere. New training sessions happened in glass-walled rooms, where security staff practiced respectful screening procedures. A diverse group of medical professionals served on the Community Advisory Board, their pictures displayed prominently. Watch this, Barbara said, leading Maya to the security checkpoint. A young black female doctor approached with her credentials. The new security officer, a Hispanic woman named Maria, followed the updated protocol. Clear, professional, and the same for every passenger. We're not just changing rules, Barbara explained. We're changing the culture. Every staff member gets cultural competency training. We've updated our hiring practices to remove bias, and most importantly, we're listening to our passengers. Back in the conference room, hospital administrators shared their own changes. Boston General had reviewed all their transport contracts, adding anti-discrimination clauses. Other hospitals followed suit. The American Medical Association had created new guidelines for medical transport services. Maya's phone buzzed with a message from her lawyer. The anonymous tips about discrimination were now being properly investigated. 3 other aviation companies had settled similar complaints, agreeing to make systemic changes. Later that afternoon, Maya visited a new addition to the terminal, a comfortable lounge specifically for medical professionals traveling to emergencies. The walls showed diverse faces of doctors, nurses, and medical staff. A sign read, "All heroes welcome." This was Tanya's idea, Barbara explained. She said if we're serving medical professionals, we should understand their world. We trained our staff about emergency medical transport. They know that every minute counts when a doctor is traveling for surgery. The day's final presentation came from Dr. James Chen, who had started the petition after Maya's incident. In 1 month, we've seen more progress than in 20 years, he said. 28 private aviation companies have signed our equality pledge. 15 major hospitals have updated their transport policies, but we're just getting started. He unveiled the new Medical Transport Equality Initiative, a program to track and improve the experiences of medical professionals using private aviation. Maya had helped design it, ensuring it focused on practical changes, not just paperwork. As the meeting ended, Maya stayed behind, looking at the terminal through the conference room windows. A group of medical students toured the facility, part of a new program to familiarize future doctors with medical transport procedures. Among them, she noticed several young women of color, walking confidently through the same spaces where she had faced discrimination. Tanya joined her at the window. "You know what the best change is?" she asked. It's not the new policies or the training programs. It's that people finally feel safe speaking up. Last week, a doctor reported unfair treatment at another company's terminal. Within hours, they had video evidence, witness statements, and a clear path to resolution. That's what real change looks like. Maya nodded, thinking about all the doctors who would never have to go through what she experienced. Sometimes the biggest changes started with one person standing their ground, one company admitting its mistakes, one industry deciding to do better. We're not finished, Tanya added, gathering her papers. But for the first time, I believe we're on the right path. Maya smiled, remembering her mother's words. Sometimes you have to go through turbulence to reach clear skies. The aviation industry was finally starting to understand that diversity wasn't just about images on walls or policies in handbooks. It was about creating spaces where everyone could soar. 1 month after the incident, Maya sat across from Richard Palmer, CEO of Elite Aviation, in his office. The morning sun streamed through large windows, illuminating the changes that now decorated his walls. New company policies, diversity initiative posters, and a framed copy of their updated mission statement. Dr. Richardson, Palmer began, his tone different from their previous meetings. We've finalized everything with your lawyer. He slid a thick envelope across his desk. Inside was not just a settlement check, but something more meaningful, a comprehensive document outlining all the changes the company had implemented and their plans for the future. Maya picked up the envelope but didn't open it. Tell me about Thomas Whitman, she said quietly. It was the first time she had mentioned the guard's name since the incident. Palmer straightened in his chair. He was terminated immediately after our investigation, but more importantly, we discovered his history of similar incidents that had gone unreported. We've contacted those affected and are making things right. Maya nodded, then reached into her briefcase. I have a proposal for you. She pulled out her own document. Plans for the Dr. Maya Richardson Scholarship Fund. I want to use the settlement money to help minority medical students, but I need Elite Aviation's help to make it bigger. Palmer leaned forward, genuinely interested. This wasn't what he had expected. Maya continued. Every year, dozens of brilliant students drop out of medical school due to financial pressure. I want to change that. 2 hours later, Maya left the office with more than just a settlement. Elite Aviation had agreed to match her scholarship fund dollar for dollar and provide free flights for scholarship recipients attending medical conferences or interviews. What started as discrimination was transforming into opportunity. That afternoon, Maya visited the terminal where everything had started. The changes were striking. New security staff greeted her warmly, following clear and professional protocols. The walls displayed a diverse array of medical professionals, and a large screen showed real-time updates on medical transport flights. Barbara Chen met her at the security checkpoint. Dr. Richardson, welcome back. Are you ready to see everything? They walked through the terminal together. The old security desk where Whitman had stood was gone, replaced by a modern station with multiple officers of different backgrounds. Each wore a body camera and displayed their credentials clearly. Over here, Barbara pointed, is our new medical priority lane. Any doctor traveling for emergency care gets expedited screening. And here, she showed Maya a QR code prominently displayed. Passengers can instantly report any concerns directly to our oversight board. Maya's phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, her lawyer. The settlement documents were officially filed. But more importantly, 6 other private aviation companies had reached out, wanting to implement similar changes and contribute to the scholarship fund. Later that evening, Maya attended a small ceremony in the terminal's new conference room. Elite Aviation was officially launching their Reform Security Training Program. To her surprise, they had named it after her, the Richardson Protocol for Equal Treatment. The room was filled with faces that reflected the changes, new security officers from diverse backgrounds, airline executives committed to transformation, and even some of the passengers who had witnessed the original incident. Tanya Williams, now settled into her role as Chief of Diversity and Inclusion, gave a moving speech. A month ago, this terminal was a place of discrimination. Today, it's a model for change. Dr. Richardson showed us that one person standing up for what's right can transform an entire industry. As Maya stood to speak, she saw familiar faces in the crowd. Her mother, wiping proud tears. her sister Rachel, beaming with support. Dr. Watson, her therapist, who had helped her process the trauma. Even Mrs. Chen, her patient, had come to show support. What happened to me was wrong, Maya began, her voice clear and strong. But the response, your response, has been powerful. This isn't just about making things right for one person. It's about ensuring that every professional, every passenger, every person who walks through these doors is treated with dignity and respect. She held up the scholarship fund documents. And now, we're going to make sure that the next generation of medical professionals never has to face what I faced. Because sometimes, the best response to discrimination isn't just fixing the problem, it's creating new opportunities. As the ceremony ended, Maya walked through the terminal one last time. A young black girl watched her pass, eyes wide with recognition. Her mother whispered something, and the girl smiled shyly. Maya stopped. "Do you want to be a doctor?" she asked the girl. "Yes," the child answered. "Just like you." Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a card for the scholarship fund. "Then let's make sure you have every chance to succeed." 6 months after the incident, Maya stood in front of the same terminal where her story began. The early morning sun painted the sky in soft colors, just like that fateful day, but everything else had changed. A large banner hung over the entrance. Medical Excellence Conference. Welcome, doctors. Maya checked her watch, right on schedule for her rescheduled keynote speech. This time, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood 5 young medical students, winners of the first Richardson Scholarship Awards. Dr. Richardson called out Maria, the new head of security. "Your group's priority access is ready." The security process was smooth, professional, and identical for everyone. Maya noticed a small plaque near the security station that read, "The Richardson Protocol in effect. Equal treatment, every time." Inside the terminal, the changes were everywhere. The walls showed photos of medical professionals from all backgrounds. A digital board tracked medical transport flights, with clear protocols displayed. Most importantly, the staff reflected the diversity of the passengers they served. "Is this really where it happened?" asked Jessica, one of the scholarship students. A young black woman in her second year of medical school, she had read about Maya's story in her medical ethics class. "Right here," Maya replied, pointing to the spot. But look what grew from that moment. She gestured to the terminal around them, now a model of inclusive practices that other airports were copying across the country. Their flight to Chicago was smooth and on time. In the conference center, Maya felt a different kind of nervousness than 6 months ago. This time, she wasn't just presenting her medical research. She was also sharing the story of transformation that had touched the entire industry. The conference hall was packed. In the front row sat hospital administrators, aviation executives, and civil rights leaders. But Maya's eyes found the faces that meant the most. Her scholarship students, seeing their first major medical conference. Dr. James Chen introduced her with pride. 6 months ago, Dr. Richardson was denied access to this very conference. Today, she returns not just as a brilliant neurosurgeon, but as a catalyst for change that has transformed private aviation and medical transport forever. Maya took the podium, her presentation ready. First, she shared her groundbreaking research on brain tumor treatment, the work that should have been presented 6 months ago. The medical community listened intently, taking notes and asking questions. Then she moved to the second part of her talk. From incident to impact, creating lasting change, the screens showed impressive numbers. 28 private aviation companies had adopted the Richardson Protocol. Over 50 hospitals had updated their transport policies. The scholarship fund had raised enough to support 15 medical students per year. Discrimination complaints in private aviation had dropped by 70%. Medical transport delays due to security issues had decreased by 85%. In the audience, Tanya Williams, now a respected industry leader in diversity initiatives, nodded with satisfaction. Elite aviation stock had not only recovered but reached new highs, proving that doing the right thing could also be good business. After the presentation, Maya led a workshop for medical students about navigating professional challenges. The room was diverse, filled with young faces full of hope and determination. They weren't just learning about medicine, they were learning how to stand up for what's right. Later that evening, at a small dinner with her scholarship students, Maya listened to their dreams. One wanted to serve rural communities lacking medical care. Another planned to research rare diseases. A third hoped to become a neurosurgeon, just like her. Dr. Richardson, one student asked, "Did you ever imagine that missing your flight would lead to all this?" Maya smiled, remembering her mother's words about turbulence and clear skies. "Sometimes," she said, "the most important journeys take unexpected paths." As they left the conference center, Maya's phone buzzed with news. 3 more aviation companies had joined the Equality Initiative. A major hospital chain was starting its own scholarship program based on her model. The changes were still spreading, growing stronger. Back at the hotel, Maya stood at her window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. On her desk lay tomorrow's schedule: morning rounds with students at Chicago General, another presentation, and meetings with medical transport companies. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Barbara Chen. "Just wanted you to know, we had our first full month with 0 discrimination complaints. Your legacy grows stronger every day." Maya thought about that morning 6 months ago when she had stood alone at a security checkpoint. Now, because she had stood her ground, thousands would find their paths a little easier, their dreams a little closer, their skies a little clearer. Sometimes, she realized, the greatest medical breakthrough isn't in the operating room. It's in breaking down the barriers that keep people from reaching the operating room in the first place.